Good morning. My name is Eric Natsarenko, the Ventura County District Attorney. On Tuesday of this week, U.S. Marshals transported Warren Luther Alexander, age 73, of Diamondhead, Mississippi, to Southern California, pursuant to an extradition warrant signed by Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina. Once in Southern California, Mr. Alexander was arrested, secured, and delivered to the possession of the Ventura County Sheriff. Alexander was in custody in Surry County, North Carolina, at the time of the extradition. He was in custody in North Carolina for the charge of murder when we sought in Ventura County and successfully achieved his extradition to our county to stand trial for 2 murder counts. For the September 8th murder in the city of Oxnard of Velvet Sanchez. For the December 27th, 1977 murder of Lorraine Rodriguez in unincorporated Ventura County. While the extradition warrant was being reviewed and processed, we identified a 3rd victim connected to Warren Luther Alexander, Kimberly Fritz, murdered on May 29th, 1977. These murders may have occurred 47 years ago, but the investigators with the Ventura County DA's office, the investigators with the Ventura County Sheriff's Department Cold Case Unit, and officers and detectives with Port Hueneme and Oxnard never gave up. They never gave up seeking justice for these 3 victims, their loved ones, and their families. Just because a case has gone cold does not mean it should ever be forgotten. And while we cannot bring back Kimberly, Velvet, and Lorraine, we can make sure that the person accused of these horrific crimes faces in Ventura County the full weight and force of the law. For Warren Luther Alexander, once a fugitive from justice, the day of reckoning in Ventura County has finally arrived.
Good morning. On December 27th, 1977, shortly after 6 in the morning, deputies from the Ventura County Sheriff's Office were dispatched to a call of a female found on the bridge at Laguna Road in the Oxnard Plains area of unincorporated Ventura County. Deputies arrived and found Lorraine Rodriguez lying against the south shoulder of the bridge. Rodriguez was found with a ligature around her neck. The autopsy determined her death was caused by strangulation. Evidence which would later be used for DNA analysis was collected. Investigators from the Sheriff's Office investigated this case until all leads were exhausted and the case became cold. Lorraine Rodriguez was just 21 years old at the time of her death. She was born in Kansas. Her family moved to Oxnard. She attended the Port Hueneme High School. Lorraine had a son, daughter. Lorraine is survived by her mother, 1 sister, her daughter, and 3 brothers. Lorraine's daughter was just 3 years old at the time of her death. Her family described Lorraine as a loving and devoted mother who loved spending time with her family. Ventura County law enforcement has used advancements in DNA technology to re-examine unsolved cases. Due to significant advancements in science and technology, forensic biological evidence can now be analyzed with greater accuracy, sensitivity, and efficiency. The Ventura County Cold Case Homicide Unit, operated under the Ventura County Sheriff's Office, is a dedicated team of detectives committed to investigating unsolved homicide cases and identifying previously unidentified human remains. The unit consists of a team of 3 full-time sheriffs, sworn detectives, 2 part-time non-sworn investigators, 2 part-time district attorney investigators, a full-time investigative assistant, and a full-time sheriff's office forensic scientist. This unit works collaboratively to review evidence, utilizing advances in DNA technology, and implementing innovative forensic techniques, while also partnering with outside agencies to bring closure to cold cases. To run a cold case unit does cost money. I'd like to personally thank U.S. Representative Julia Brownlee through the fiscal year 2022 Consolidated Appropriations Act for providing our cold case unit with a $950,000 check to support the investigation of backlogged violent crime and sexual assault cases using modern DNA technology. In a little over a year, our cold case unit has achieved remarkable success, leading to several high-profile case arrests, including the cases of Rachel Zendejas, Lisa Gondek of 1981, Monica Leach from 1997, and a series of strangulation murders now from 1977. I'd like to now call up Oxnard Police Chief Jason Benitez.
On September 8th, 1977, 31-year-old Velvet Sanchez lived at the Via Motel, which is located on the 1700 block of South Oxnard Boulevard. On this day, a witness saw her return to her room in the company of an adult white male with a beard. Later that day, she was found dead in her motel room. Oxnard police responded, and officers found that Sanchez had a ligature tied around her neck. Investigators collected DNA samples from the crime scene, and the autopsy later revealed that she died of strangulation. Velvet was born in Amarillo, Texas. She had left her job at the Navy Exchange just shortly before the time of her death. She was married at the time but was separated. She had 3 children, only one of which is surviving today. She is also survived by her sister. These murder cases have literally spanned generations, through generations of detectives. Many of the detectives and officers that initially responded to these cases are either long since retired or some have passed on. I'd like to thank the investigators from the District Attorney's Office, detectives and crime lab technicians from the Ventura County Sheriff's Office, detectives and staff from the Port Hueneme Police Department, and of course our own detectives from the Oxnard Police Department and our crime scene technicians. This county team of law enforcement agencies has worked over the last 47 years to keep these cases alive and to reach this important day and to bring justice to our victims. Thank you for persisting and never giving up. And now I'll turn this over to Port Hueneme Chief Mike Federico.
On May 29, 1977, the Port Hueneme Police Department responded to a call at the Marvin. The Marvin was located on Hueneme Road, a short distance away from the Plaza Marina. In room 18, officers located the body of Kimberly Fritz. She was on the floor with a ligature around her neck. An autopsy revealed her death was a result of strangulation. At the scene, evidence was recovered from both the scene and the victim. Folks, Kimberly Fritz was 18 years old at the time of her death. She was born in Michigan. She attended school in Ann Arbor, and she was one of 3 sisters. Today, she is survived by her father and one of her sisters. A lot has changed in Ventura County since the deaths of Kimberly Fritz, Velvet Sanchez, and Lorraine Rodriguez. But what hasn't changed is our commitment to provide justice for the victims and their families. We hope that this arrest is a step towards accountability and a step towards closure for the families. With that, I would like to turn this over to our Ventura County District Attorney, Eric Nazarenko.
In 1977, detectives working these 3 cases did notice that there were patterns, similarities, and common features among the crimes that led them to believe that it was at the hands of the same suspect. Specifically, all three victims were commercial sex workers, a vocation that subjected them to violence, trafficking, as well as extreme exploitation. All three victims were known to frequent the Plaza Marina shopping center in South Oxnard and nearby motels. This was a center at the time in the 1970s and 1980s of commercial sex traffic. Furthermore, all three had died through ligature strangulation. While believing these three crimes were indeed connected, leads ran cold, and detectives were unable to identify who was responsible for these horrific murders. The investigation was exhaustive and went on for decades. In fact, in 2006, detectives with the Cold Case Unit, on behalf of the Ventura County Sheriff's Department, uploaded into CODIS, which is the Combined DNA Index System, a nationwide database of DNA profiles from convicted offenders, crime scenes, as well as missing persons, forensic evidence from the 1977 murders. However, there was no match. Last year in 2023, however, a breakthrough emerged. Once again, detectives with the Cold Case Unit on behalf of the Ventura County Sheriff's Department uploaded crucial DNA evidence into that nationwide DNA database. And in this case, a match occurred, specifically a match to Warren Luther Alexander. In 2022, as I mentioned, Mr. Alexander was arrested in North Carolina. In that case, he was identified through investigative genetic genealogy, and a DNA profile emerged. It is the matching of our evidence against the North Carolina one that led us here today. The 1992 murder in North Carolina occurred also through strangulation. The victim in that case was 29-year-old Nona Cobb, whose body was left alongside Interstate 77. We all here, on behalf of the Ventura County law enforcement community, want to thank our colleagues and partners in North Carolina. They were the primary prosecutorial jurisdiction in this case. They filed the first murder charge. They had Mr. Alexander in custody. But nevertheless, they understood that time was not on Ventura County's side. We had multiple murders occurring over 4 decades ago. Witnesses were aging. The case needed to proceed efficiently, quickly, and expeditiously. They understood the importance of our 3 cases. They worked collaboratively and cooperatively to make sure that the extradition request was processed thoroughly and put before the North Carolina governor. So I thank the Surry County Sheriff's Office, the Surry County District Attorney's Office, the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, and all those who worked on this case, including Dr. Colleen Fitzpatrick of Identifiers International. Furthermore, we also wish to thank the governor of the state of California, Gavin Newsom. It is our application for extradition that we submit to him, who in turn submits it to the governor of North Carolina. So we are thankful for the processing and approval of that extradition request. I want to conclude by just sharing with you what we know about Warren Luther Alexander. As I mentioned, age 73, from Diamondhead, Mississippi. We know that he lived in the city of Oxnard in the late 1950s and 1960s. In fact, he attended elementary, middle school, and high school up until his sophomore year in Oxnard, in the county of Ventura. He was a cab driver, he was an electrician with the United States Marine Corps, and he returned to Oxnard in the 1970s. Because of Nona Cobb's alleged murder, we, the Sheriff's Department, the District Attorney's Office, Oxnard, and Port Hueneme, are working with the FBI, specifically their Violent Criminal Apprehension Program and the Highway Serial Killer Initiative, to draw parallels, to see when patterns emerge, and to hopefully solve additional crimes. As you may know, Alexander right now is currently held in Ventura County Jail without bail. His next arraignment date is the 21st of this month. Today marks the first crucial step towards achieving long-awaited justice for these three women, their loved ones, and their families. While we can never undo the past, we remain committed to ensuring that such heinous acts as these never go unanswered. We'd be happy to answer any questions. Lance?
Obviously, we've got 3 cases here in North Carolina. Is there a belief that there may be more victims out there that we haven't connected yet?
There is. We believe there may be additional victims both locally and other states. This is an ongoing investigation, and we will continue to pursue all leads that become available. This is not in any way closed.
I heard he was a truck driver at one point.
He was.
Talk about that a little bit. That's throughout the entire nation.
He was for the 1970s, 1980s, as well as the early 1990s, a long-haul cross-country truck driver.
Had he ever had any contact with the police while he was a resident of Ventura County? Was there any background or any contact there had ever been? No criminal record at all?
Peggy, very minor.
Did he sexually assault these women at the same time, or was his goal only to murder them?
What we can share with you is that forensic evidence was collected from the bodies of these three women, as well as clothing. Both the forensic evidence collected from the bodies, as well as the clothing, have been very helpful in the DNA analysis.
And my other question, when his DNA was first uploaded into CODIS in 2022? Okay.
For viewers that don't understand DNA, can you just talk about how DNA, because your detectives in the 70s collected DNA at the scene of these, but what has changed now that you were able to make this match? Can you just talk about how the technology's evolved from then back to now?
Our ability to grab, collect, and analyze has advanced substantially. We can find samples in ways in the past that we could not. We also have the ability to identify profiles using those samples, isolate them, and send them to outside labs. Most notably here is this nationwide database. We can take forensic evidence from the bodies of victims, including clothing, including fluids, upload it into this national database to see if there is a match. So there are advances in the technology that allow us to do matches and hits in ways that we couldn't even imagine 20 years ago.
Eric, it was another victim, Cassandra Lee Miller, who was found dead in her hotel in Port Hueneme, October 1st, 1975, also from strangulation with underwear. Was there any investigation done in whether Alexander was connected with that, or do you have any leads on that particular case?
As I mentioned, this is an active investigation. We do indeed believe there are additional victims both locally and in other states. We are looking very closely and carefully at Ms. Miller's case, and we will continue to investigate thoroughly and comprehensively whether or not that 1975 case is connected to the 1977 ones.
Did he live anywhere else in Southern California?
I do not have any information in that regard.
Once North Carolina was able to make their match and enter that information, do you guys then get an alert, or how did that connection happen?
The crime lab with the Ventura County Sheriff's Department gets an alert. And then thereafter, you have to verify that there is a connection between the match through the combined DNA index system and the offender whose DNA you believe you have found on the victims. So there is the initial hit, and then thereafter, you take, in this case, a buccal swab from the defendant, and you match it against a known profile.
Now, in 1977, they didn't even really have DNA at that point, so this was all evidence that was properly stored, so they were able to extract the DNA later. So this seems like it's on the spectrum where it's pretty far out for solving a crime, 1977. I know there's been a few earlier ones.
I mentioned the dogged and unrelenting investigation by the law enforcement community. Part of that entailed the preservation and storage of key evidence. Now, in some cases, it degrades. We're unable to utilize it. But what allowed us to file 3 first-degree murder charges was the preservation of evidence that led to the DNA match.
Two questions. Does he go by Warren too? Is that what he goes by, Warren, or does he go by Luther?
I don't know. We call him Warren Luther Alexander.
And my second question is, what is he saying when you guys arrested him? Is he admitting to this, or is he not talking?
We don't disclose statements to law enforcement at this stage in the proceeding.
Does he have a family? Was he married and have children?
He was married. I don't know whether or not he had children.
I know this was asked, but Mr. Alexander, you can't definitively say that he picked up these women for sex, had paid them for sex, and then the strangulation happened. Can you say anything regarding that?
The sequence is something that we can't speak to, but we can let you know that they were indeed commercial sex workers. We believe, based upon the facts and the evidence, that Mr. Alexander did pick them up for commercial sex activity, and then thereafter, murders are allegedly to have occurred.
Have you spoken to the victims' families, and what have they said, if anything?
I have not personally spoken to the victims' families, but they have spoken to prosecutors and others. They are deeply mournful, grieving, but nevertheless grateful that there has been at least an arrest in this case.
2 more questions.
Eric, will you be seeking the death penalty on this?
Because of the age of the witnesses, some are in their 70s, some are in their 80s, and because of the age of the evidence, we have to move, as I mentioned, quickly, efficiently, and expeditiously. If we sought the death penalty, we would not be able to do so. So right now, this case will proceed as life without the possibility of parole, so we can get it to trial and bring closure to these victims and their families.
Last one. All right. Thank you, everyone.